conversation with Mr. Deepak Parekh, Chairman of HDFC. We're talking to him about the economic outlook for 2013, what the continuing challenges are, and whether we're turning around at all. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, the numbers don't look good at the moment, whether it's GDP growth, inflation is still uncomfortably high, fiscal deficit. You, of course, know what the problems are. So where are we at right now as an economy?
Well, I think there's a general consensus that the Indian economy has bottomed out. So there's only one way to go. So I am reasonably optimistic for 2013. If you see the GDP growth rate, this is the lowest growth rate. Financial year 13, we'll have the lowest growth rate in a decade, 5.5, 5.6. But if you look at next year, I'm very positive that we'll grow at 6, 6.5. We won't go to 8 or 9, but at least the growth will be there. And there are a number of reasons. We still have fundamental problems in the economy, as you mentioned, high fiscal deficit, high current account deficit, infrastructure bottlenecks, and capital spending is not happening. Companies are not investing in plant and machinery, in capital spending. That investment cycle must start. So these fundamental problems remain. Despite that, I think there's a lot going on, and with the reforms the government has announced over the last few months, the parliament functioned successfully, albeit for a small period of time. So some bills have been passed. So I'm reasonably positive that 2013 will be a much better year than 2012.
But when you say 6.5%, you're talking about not in the first couple of quarters. We'll still see a lot of sluggishness, you think, in the next?
Well, let us see what comes out this quarter. But when you compare GDP growth rates in other countries and other developed economies, we are doing far better.
Sure.
We are doing far better. US expectation for this quarter is 1% GDP growth.
But
so if you do 5.3, 5.5, I don't think it is something to feel shy about it. The whole world has come down. The growth rates have collapsed all over. Eurozone will be in recession in 2013. There is no hope that in 2013 Europe will start doing well. So I think getting to 6+% would be a good thing for us.
But when it's a domestic consumption-led economy, one can expect a higher GDP growth the way...
We would like to see a higher GDP growth rate. Now, if you look at consumption credit, the consumption credit penetration is the lowest in India. It is only 8% of GDP. That's consumer credit penetration. In China, it is 25%. So there is a long way to go. And the Indian economy is growing because of consumerism. Consumption is happening. Middle class people are spending. People are spending and buying consumer durables and spending money on themselves. So the growth rate is there. We need more capital investment. And capital investment, infrastructure investments have got slowed down because of environmental concerns, land acquisition. You know the problems that we are facing. Now, unfortunately, the NIB, the National Investment Board, has been re-christianed as the CCI, Cabinet Committee on Investment. Now, Cabinet Committee on Investment, although will be chaired by the Prime Minister, it has been watered down, what was approved by the Cabinet, than what was originally envisaged. For instance, the CCI, that is the Cabinet Committee on Investment, will not have power to clear projects. There will be more coordinating agencies. They can push projects, they can push other ministries, but they cannot overrule other ministries. So it has, the NIB or the CCI has come out in a form which is much weaker than what was envisaged. A strong NIB with the Prime Minister at the head could push projects faster. But we'll still, let's see, there's some improvement. At least we have a Cabinet Committee on Investment. And if they clear a couple of projects which are stuck for a last year or so, large projects, maybe on power or maybe on road, or I think it will give a good signal.
You also think next year, being the year before elections, is also a good year for governments to come forward with pushing reform, with making changes. So in that sense also we're poised well for next year. The advances growth, the deposit growth is showing sluggishness as well. So should we be worried about credit growth as well?
No, unless projects are approved, unless our entrepreneurs are willing to put money on capital spending, The growth has to be sluggish, the growth in advances. But the growth in infrastructure is enormous. The possibility of a growth in infrastructure is enormous. If the projects that are lying incomplete, in a state of awaiting raw materials, awaiting approvals, if even some of these get through, then the credit growth will start. So most banks are concentrating on retail growth, on mortgage loans, on all retail consumer loans, and so that growth is huge. But I agree the deposit growth has been sluggish. Again, probably in the last 5 years, this is the lowest, the year where we have the lowest growth in bank deposits. I think the target, we always get about 16-17% growth in bank deposits, but this year it will be 12-13% bank deposits. The number of reasons, inflation is taking away a lot of money. People are spending, so inflation has been high in the last year. So people have and investments have been made in real estate. Gold has been a big problem in the sense that we had large imports of gold last year, which has, again, people have spent money by buying gold. So instead of savings going into bank deposits, they've gone for gold.
Okay.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.